Welcome back to the Premier Realty Group video podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Green, the marketing director for Premier Realty Group. We have offices in Paris, McKenzie, and Huntingdon, and we're online at prerealtygroup.com. Today we're going to talk appraisals with our guest, Kevin Furr from Furr Appraisal Services in Camden. Kevin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Kelly. How are you?
Doing well. For folks who aren't familiar with appraisals, maybe because they rent or they're about to be a first-time home buyer, what is an appraisal and what's the importance of it?
Well, an appraisal is opinion of value. On the lender side, for the banks, basically they're wanting to know that their collateral will stand for the loan.
Gotcha.
And that's why they send us out to make sure that if they get their house back, they're not getting something that's not going to get their money back on.
For someone who is selling a home, does an appraiser strike fear into the hearts of that home seller like a dentist would strike fear into me?
A lot of times they do. That's true. But it's not that bad.
Right. So what does an appraisal cost and who pays for it?
Well, it just depends. I mean, there's several different scopes of appraisals, different types of appraisals, depend on what it's for. And there's lending appraisals, there are estate appraisals, there's tax appraisals. Everything depends on the scope of the appraisal, how much work it is, how much they want to do, what is included in it.
Right.
But just for your general population, most of them get them for lending purposes. It just depends on what it is.
Gotcha.
They run anywhere from $400 to $600 on your typical residential house.
Is every appraisal different in accordance with the type of home loan a person is getting?
Not necessarily. I mean, you have different home loans. You have in-house bank loans where, like the bank, they're not as stringent on certain rules as USDA or FHA or a VA would be.
Right.
And then once you bump up to the government issued agencies, that's when things get a little bit more complicated.
Gotcha. Some people confuse appraisals with home inspections,
Right.
two very different animals and two different people.
Right. Yeah, I get that a lot. They say, "Oh, you're the home inspector." No, I'm the appraiser.
Right.
And they're expecting me to do what the home inspector does, and we do totally different things.
I mean, you're doing a form of inspection, but it's a different type of inspection to set a value on the home.
Well, we try not to use the word inspection
Okay, yep.
in the appraisal.
Right.
Observation is a better word for
Okay.
us. Yeah, there's too many lawsuits in the word
Gotcha.
inspection.
Okay, fair enough. All right, for some appraisals, I guess there are other structures on the property beside the home. Let's say there's a barn. Let's say there's a shop building. How does that factor into the overall appraisal?
Well, like for USDA, FHA, VA, the main things are safety, security, and soundness, because they want to know all three of those things are included in the collateral that they're taking for the loan. And like peel and paint, I know that's a big thing, especially before 1978 because it had lead-based paint, and they like it to be scraped and painted, and that's the main thing. That's one thing I hate to do. A lot of times everything runs smooth, and then you run over here to part of the house and it's peel and paint.
Yeah.
And then you got to use that for repair, and then they have to do that. Then I have to come back out and look at it, or that somebody does. But peel and paint and steps, handrails on steps.
Yep.
That's another big one. Good rule of thumb: if it's over 3 steps, put a handrail on.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Talk about comps or comparables. How does that factor into the appraisal? How close does the comp have to be to the home you're giving the appraisal on? And how long does a comp last? I mean, let's say it's 5 years ago. Is that too long to go back?
Well, it depends. You're in rural West Tennessee.
Yep.
You don't have a lot of comps on a lot of things. We're different than if you was in Nashville or Franklin.
Very different.
Where there's comps all over the place. Location is a big factor. Location, what they say in the real estate business. But however, just because location is not always the main factor in an appraisal now. Used to, Fannie Mae, they didn't want anything far away. They wanted it right there. But reality, and if you're out here in rural Henry County, there's not that many sales. I mean, you just have to do what you got to do. I like to find houses. I like to use comps that's more similar to the house, not necessarily the location. But however, if you got comps right there that on the same street, you do have to consider them.
Gotcha. We're talking to Kevin Furr with Furr Appraisal Services, located in Camden, 731-584-9800. The best way to get in touch with you?
Correct.
Okay. Talk more about aesthetics. You talked about paint that's peeling. You talked about the banister, the railing that needs to go on the steps. What about stains on carpets? How do things like that factor into the overall appraisal?
Well, stains on carpet, FHA, VA, cosmetics, you really can't call that out. But that does obviously has a effect on the value for your buyers, for the sellers. If cause a principal substitution. If you got two buyers or a buyer looking at 3 or 4 houses and everything is the same and they're pulled, don't know which way to go, and you got a house with stained carpet and a house that does not, they're probably going to go with the one that does not.
Yeah. Should a seller prepare for the appraiser to arrive at the home?
I wouldn't go overboard because,
Okay.
a lot of times you're getting into, you're appraising houses, people's trying to move, they got boxes up, and that's one thing that I get a lot of times. Well, I've got boxes everywhere. I don't really want you to come.
Right.
If we waited on that, they're moving. That's part of the process. We understand that. All appraisers, they understand that, and we take that. We can overlook a lot of things.
Yeah.
We know what's going on.
Gotcha. If I'm paying cash for a home, is an appraisal required?
That's up to the buyer.
Gotcha.
Some buyers, they like to do it just to make sure that they know what they're doing, that they're getting the value that they need.
Would it be advisable? Would you advise someone?
Certain times I would.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't think it's necessary.
Gotcha. Kevin Furr, Furr Appraisal Services, located in Camden, 731-584-9800. I think we've covered all the bases. You know a lot more about it than I do. Anything we've left out that we need to cover here?
Yeah, it's one thing that one of my pet peeves.
Here it comes. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, Kevin.
Right. On MLS, realtors, they use square footage different than appraisers.
Okay.
For instance, you got 1,000 square foot house with 1,000 square foot finished basement. Realtors, sometimes they like to call that as a 2,000 square foot house.
Okay.
We cannot. So, because anything below grade is not considered in the gross living area.
Oh, wow.
Does not mean it doesn't have value, but at that point, if they're calling it a 2,000 square foot house, then they think we should compare it to a 2,000 square foot above grade house.
Gotcha.
And that's just not the way it is. Fannie Mae, VA, and all them call us out on it. We can't do that. So that has always been one of the big factors between realtors and appraisers.
I see. But there is still value there.
Oh, yeah, there's value.
And it's factored into the appraisal itself.
It's just a different way
of looking at it.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. Are you online? What's your website, Kevin?
Furrappraisal.com.
Furrappraisal.com, 731-584-9800. Kevin Furr with Furr Appraisal Services. Thanks for answering a lot of questions and being on the podcast.
Hey, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching, too.